Welcome back to the show. Dana, you are not in the same place as usual.
I'm at my teaching job. We have an all-day thing today. So
at your day job?
Yeah. One of my day jobs. But I'm in like a breakout room there. I didn't have time for us to tape and then get to campus. So I'm taping from this lovely, boring, no art on the walls, creepy breakout room that we have here.
I mean, blink twice if you're in trouble.
Right? And then if I'm a good autistic, I'm going to go and make it really obvious. I can't even be subtle about it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I was going to do something, but I'm not going to do it. You're much better at segues. And I'm just like, my segues could border inappropriate. I don't know. Like, it's just, it's not good.
God, what are you drinking? How's that for a segue? We want to talk about bluntness today.
Bluntness.
Yeah. It's funny. So I've gotten feedback about my like straightforward bluntness to the point style way before I was diagnosed autistic. And it was actually chalked up then to being a Midwesterner, being from Chicago. We just like, boom, if you got something to say it, right? My family growing up, if you had something to say, you say it. You don't it actually took some adjusting for me to be on the West Coast where no one ever says anything straightforward and clear. It's like, what the hell are you trying to say to me right now, right? But we also, now I've learned since, that being neurodivergent, I think especially autistic, people can think we're being like overly blunt, like too straight to the point. And so there is a sort of missing of what's social expectations around how you say something back to somebody, right? So if I'm with people I know really well, it's usually not a problem. But if it's like with my students or someone I haven't met yet, I think I'm naturally pretty metered about it with clients, right? It's just sort of different part of me on during that. I'll tell students, I'm autistic, I'm from the Midwest. Where I really get the feedback from students is emails, because I don't put the fluff in there. Someone taught me once, like the sandwich thing you're supposed to do, where you say something nice and then you say something critical and then you say something nice. And I'm just like, oh, are we 5 years old? I get irritated by that, right? To me, it's sort of like this parsimonious, if you have something to say, just say it and be done with it. And so I've had so many students over the years be like, are you mad at me? And I'm like, no, why? Oh, well, the email you sent. And I'm like, oh God, sorry. You asked me a question. I answered the question. I just write Dana mostly at the signature thing. I've learned to like write warmly or hope you're doing okay. And I'm just like, it's not natural. It feels totally exhausting to be like, if you're that sensitive to it, who's the one with the problem? But it is totally something that we get constantly. And I think it can really get us in trouble with neurotypicals. Interestingly, though, this has not happened with fellow neurodivergents. I never get this feedback from fellow neurodivergents. So I think it really is a way of processing in that regard. Or people that are neurofriendly like you, you've never been like, oh my God, Daddy, you're too blunt. In fact, you sort of appreciate it. Yeah. I've gotten into some deep water, just I can tell, like some eye rolls and things like that with coworkers and so on, and sometimes socially. But yeah, so kids will get this skills training, right? Maybe adults too, around things like how to address an email or what you should say in the email. And actually writing warmly is about it's about as far as I'm comfortable with. I have a colleague of mine, and it fits for him. He says yours, and then he says his name, and I'm like, is it really yours? Do you only use yours for like, isn't that a romantic thing? But it works for him. But I'm like, I tried writing yours once, and it just felt overly intimate. I'm like, I don't think I can do that. Okay, so warmly. And now sometimes I'll purposely put warmly if I've said something kind of hard, like, please know I'm coming from a good place. And everybody will say, when I know you know who you are, I never take it that way. But it's especially people that don't know me well, because I'm just like German, Austrian roots, Midwestern or Chicago, and straight to it. And it doesn't always go over so well, that bluntness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You used a word, blunt, straight to the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the other word that comes to mind is rude. Like,
yes.
It's rude. And it's not, okay, let's make the differentiation between like rude, mean, and bullying, right? Because sometimes we get that mixed up, right? Or like, right. Sure. I think rude is, there's no intention to it. You just are saying something, doing something, and it comes off rudely.
Yeah, because the tone or whatever.
Right. Or what it's truncated. Maybe there's some nonverbals that go with it, et cetera. Okay. This is why I don't believe that. This is why maybe I'm on the more I like neuro-friendly, by the way. Dana.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm more probably on the more neurotypical side of things when it comes to social, because it's been literally ingrained in my beaten into me in assimilation. Okay, so
I say that's a huge cultural press. Yeah.
I come to it with trauma is all I'll say. Okay. Yeah. But so we've got rude. Okay, it's like kind of unintentional. It's just the way someone, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe I don't know, like whatever.
Kind of monotone, like I can talk.
Yeah.
And then it sounds rude. It sounds like I'm just like blah, 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 and I'm judging you. Yeah.
Mean, I think there's an intention behind it. Right. I want to say something to hurt your feelings, right? Yeah. That's mean. Bullying, it's when you do something intentionally to be mean and you've been asked to stop, but you don't. Ooh. That's bullying. And so I just kind of I do a lot of that differentiation with not only my clients, but with like school teams.
Oh yeah.
And other, because it's like, no, you guys, this is bullying. This isn't just someone being rude. We've crossed the line twice for this. Yeah. And this is not okay. Right. Yeah. So anyway, I'll back up to rudeness though.
But for me, like when you said being mean, I don't do mean. I need to learn to do mean. I mean, really, not really. That's a terrible thing. But like, there's not a mean bone in my body. I just can't. Yeah. It doesn't come out. If I try even to be silly, like jokes that people hurl at each other just to be sort of, I can't. That's the irony, right? So I'll say something straightforward. It's like, there isn't a mean intention in there at all. But knowing that other people can be that way. The judgy, drop a truth bomb and they really do have an intent to kind of injure or bully. That could happen.
This is I think this is a really interesting conversation because so many of the clients that I support often withdraw from social interactions because they're like, I'm called mean, but I never intended to be that. I'm just being myself.
Yeah.
I say it like I see it. And there's a truth to it for me. Mm-hmm. And it was never I never intended to throw someone under a bus with it. But the constant feedback they get, and that could also come from even punitive kinds of responses. I think especially when you're in a high school, teachers and what they might say or do.
Sure.
Maybe you're on a quote unquote behavior plan, How do we think about this? How do we hold this? And again, it comes back for us to, it depends, and it comes back to the nuances, and it comes back to the details and the context, because I don't believe there's one right way to do this.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that I don't want to tell someone, well, you need to perpetually mask yourself anytime you leave your home. That's not right either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we get a bad rap. People think we just don't care about other people. And when you were talking just a second ago, it reminded me of like manipulating people. I don't know if I could manipulate someone. I mean, that sort of fits with what you're saying, being mean and having that intention and sort of calculating. I can tell when other people are trying to manipulate me. It's like other people don't see it. And I'm like, how can you? It's like this giant pink elephant in the room. How are you not seeing that? So we can pick up on that. And I think that has something to do with our wanting that straightforward, blunt style, because there's so much second messaging in a lot of communication. We're like, would you just tell me what the scoop is? I just want to know what the truth is. Don't give me this, wrapped up sandwich where I can't even tell what it is. But we're certainly capable of all of those feelings, right? That historically we've been labeled as not. It's not the case. I do think that there can be, and I'm even hesitant to use the word here because I know it's going to be, comes with all the stuff attached to it, can be an impulsivity to it. And as I've grown up, I've been less that way. But as a kid, I would just sort of wanted to say something right when I thought it. And there's all this other stuff that comes with that. And then learning afterwards, oh, that didn't go over well, or having to explain it afterwards, right? Especially in, like, when I say mixed audiences, people that don't know me well. People that do know me well will just roll with it. Or if I do say something that seems like that, they'll call me on it. I'll be like, oh God, no, that's not what I meant at all. My wife will do that. Like, wow, that didn't feel good. I'm like, oh God, that wasn't the intent of it. Okay, I'm just checking. But yeah, there's a complexity to it. And it is that, what do others think of that, and how much social hot water the reality of it is, it does get us in trouble. And it's a real thing for other people to navigate our style and for us to figure out how to move in that. Like you said, you don't want to have to mask continually all the time. So it is a sort of a growth edge to learn how to be clear and say what you want to say, and not abandon yourself because you're wanting to stay with what you feel and think and so on. But how do you deliver it so it's not so blunt that the other person's taken aback by it, so to speak? And that's hard. It's very hard. I think I probably learned to do the majority of that in my clinical training, right? And it's an artificial relationship because you don't have that back and forth conversation like you do with a friend, but and you're trying to be sensitive and so on. Not that I'm not with other people, but if I get excited about something and I just put it out there and throw like a truth bomb out there, it's always going to have the problem, if you will, of people going, oh my God, what the hell was that? I would invite other people in neurodivergent lives to have conversations about it. So if it does feel too blunt to you, to just say, can we check in about that? Rather than the shaming of like, what's wrong with you? Because, oh my God, if I had $1 for every time I heard that growing up, I'd be living, on a beach somewhere in the Bahamas or whatever. But that sense of recognizing it's a different style, and it's okay. You don't have to completely mask and get rid of it, but have conversations with the people in your lives around it to check in, knowing it's a different style. I mean, I think that's the whole reason we do this podcast, and we always come back to awareness. It's not just awareness for you, it's awareness for the people in your life too, that they know that's kind of how you do things, right? And I do think you tend to see it a little more tweaked up in our male assigned at birth listeners, right? Because there's more socialization towards girls and women to be metered, and boys and men. There's been all kinds of research on this, that they can say the exact same things and they'll be perceived as just strong, and women will be, biatches if they say it. So yeah, it's a complex issue. It's a hard one. In hindsight, if I think about, if I was aware of this as a thing as a kid, I think it would have helped, not because I would have masked more, but I would have understood more. So instead of getting what's wrong with you? And I'd sort of reel back like, was it not okay that I said that? I might have had more choice in the matter. Like maybe I could say this differently, knowing I'm neurodivergent and it's not likely to land in a way that I intend it to. Or I wouldn't have just immediately gone to a shame place with it if someone's like, oh my God, had a reaction to what I'd said, right? It would have done a lot less damage, I think, had I known back then that I was autistic. It would have helped, right?
Yeah, the understanding the context would have given you some reasons for why it was challenging. I think it comes back to effective communication. And, being an effective communicator as a skill is something that really loads positively on efficacy and, and locus of control, like how I feel I can impact the world around me or express my feelings and my thoughts, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And effective communication is really challenging. I mean,
For anybody.
it's
Yeah.
not, right? If for
Yeah.
anyone, it's not just about saying what's in your mind. It is
Mhm.
about understanding the context that you're in
Yeah.
and how to effectively communicate,
Right.
or say what you want to say and be understood. And
Mhm.
obviously, we can't control how other people understand us or think or
Right.
feel, right? That's all out of our control. And
Yep.
we would only focus on what we can control, right? But effective communication is something that I feel and I see to be a factor that really loads on anxiety, on
Mhm.
depression,
Mhm.
on self-esteem,
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
And so being blunt and in therapy, I would say more than 90% of my clients that I work with are very blunt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the things that they say to me, I think outside of our space,
Mhm.
if they were not speaking to another neurodivergent person,
Yeah. Yeah.
would not go well,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Things like, I mean, I shared this with Dana before we hit the record button, but things like a client asked me the other day, hey, can you give me an example of what you're saying? And I provided an example. And she proceeded to say, your example sucks. Let me give you a better one.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one little piece in a full session where it's like, no,
Yeah.
you're wrong. No, that's stupid.
Or
No,
instead of
that's
just
not
like,
it at all.
I have an example that fits better for me. I mean, those are little nuances
That
you
does
can learn. Yep.
Yeah, that doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't feel right to me,
Yeah.
or um wow, your haircut's awful.
Yeah.
Wow, right. Dana, your
Yeah.
start in what are you drinking? That's not what are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
drinking? That's like that looks disgusting.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Which
It,
it wasn't. I was making it up, just so you know. Yeah.
right, of course. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like these are the things and I just go, that's not personal,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I do have the initial reaction of, ow,
Yeah.
ah,
Exactly. Yeah. Like
ee, what?
I'm a vegetarian now, but I've never liked seafood, even as a little kid. And my wife loves all seafood, and the smell is just so like she can grill salmon and do those kinds of things, but and I could see that being like, and she'll ask me, like, sure you don't mind the smell? Because I'm sure she's heard from me before or just gotten the message that I'm like, oh my God. So we had a conversation about it. I'm like, that actually doesn't bother me, fresh, that kind of thing. But poor thing, if she wants to eat tuna, like a can of tuna, she has to go outside. She has to go outside or eat it in another room, but the can has to go straight to the garage and the recycle bin. It can't sit in the sink or be in the house recycle bin because I can smell it and it'll make me insane. So you could be someone like being like, oh God, you're eating that kind of like, because you think it's repulsive. And then that has an effect on somebody else. So um, I may have done that as a little kid. I might have just been like, ew, that sticks. I can't believe you're eating that. Right. Which maybe is accepted in little kiddom. But when you're an adult, if you were to do that, people would look at you like, you are supposed to mask to a certain extent. Right. Which sucks, right? We're not telling you guys to mask. We're telling you to try to have conversations about it ahead of time so people get to know you. And then if you do have like a, rupture, we call it an attachment,
Mhm.
talk about it after the fact. But you also having to have people in your life that can give you that feedback and say, whoa, that didn't feel good. Or you start to get a sense of like, oh crap, I just threw something out there that I think was received the wrong way. And then you can clarify. And it's great if you have people in your life that will stick around for that and be like, actually, wait a minute, that came out the wrong way. Now, my mom, rest her soul, was, now I know in hindsight, she had to have been autistic. I learned my bluntness from her. she would embarrass the crap out of me when I was a kid, like out and about and say things to people. And I just be like, oh my God, I can't believe something. But if I were to have said something to her and then I kind of retracted it or wanted to correct it, there was no room for that. It would be like, oh no, you said it already. That's what you really meant. So that I think a lot of people can get back to. And then it feels like it's not safe to put anything out there because it's going to be, people aren't going to hear the repair. They're only going to hear the initial, oh, that's what you really meant. So there's some context, like you said, and some context education of people in your life that you have to have, which is like, no, sometimes it just comes out. It goes from A to Z. I don't process all those pieces in between as it's coming out. And sometimes I need to go back afterwards and fill it in. And the initial intent, if it hurt you, isn't my intent. And that was something I think in hindsight, my wife and I had to work out a lot. I didn't know I was autistic when we first met for a long time. And we did a lot of processing around our communication styles. And then when I finally did find out I was autistic, her first response was, that makes so much sense. And I'm like, oh, and I knew that she was thinking about those kinds of things. And she's, the biggest thing for her has been like, I understand you so much more and I don't take stuff so personally anymore. Right. So you can get the people in your life understanding that. And I like what you're doing with supporting folks because you're talking to like support teams at school, trying to change their minds a bit too. Right. So if I have a neurodivergent student at the grad school level who will give a comment in class and I'm like, that was awesome. But it's clear to me there's no filter on it at all because I can see other students being like, oh my God. I'll sort of help with that. Like, oh yeah, I totally get that. You're right. Right. And that sense of let's make room for different styles in the classroom, blunt not, or not, And I'll have students that are not neurodivergent that will come up, say something that feels very aggressive and judgy. And I don't sit there and go, what's wrong with you? I'm like, okay, well, let's look at that. So there's like a non-defensiveness, I think, that I've had to adopt to get through in this world. But that can be a really eloquent way for you to move around too, or you're not being artificial and you're not masking, but there has to be that sanctity and safety to process in the moment. And I'm aware that a lot of people don't have that. That is something that's cultivated, that takes a lot of work, not just on your end, but your families and your friends' ends and work and those kinds of things. And the reality of it is the bluntness does cause a lot of pain and gets us in trouble. So the one thing I could say is just try adding the repair attempt if you're aware or you get feedback, right? It almost always works. And then some people it won't work, but it's their issue. Like my mom, when oh, no, you meant what you meant. And I'm just like, as an adult, I'm like, all right, well, you're going to think what you're going to think. There's nothing I can do to change your mind. And then I had to go in my own therapy to learn to let that go. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you do need to consider the capacity of the other person.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good
And
point.
this is where, we could have a whole nother episode on communicating with narcissists or, people that may have a difficult time with their own emotional awareness and their own communication styles for their own reasons.
Right.
Because everything, again, we're a product of everything that's happened before this moment.
Right. Yeah.
And so we know that people don't usually get up and go, how can I alienate myself today? We don't do this. Like, we just don't do this.
Yeah.
And so, but the idea here is, again, it's the details and the nuances and the intentionality of things. And I think when you're intentional about things, it means that you have a strong self-knowledge or self-awareness, and that you've got choice.
Yeah.
And those are really powerful, I think, variables in my mind to empower people.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that space, it's like, how do you cultivate it? And I think that how do you choose to even minimize, if you're like, oh, I don't have a choice, I've got to communicate with these people, they're extra quote unquote sensitive to my communication style, let's just say.
Yeah.
Then the question is like, how do you minimize the time that you have to spend with that person and find other ways to not have to mask and,
And I think that can be hugely reparative. Like I've had clients that have said something to me And I've responded, and they've had it for a whole week, and they come back the following week thinking, trying to avoid it, or saying, you said this one thing and I'm pretty sure you hate me now forever. And those are great sessions, because if we can model for you that, no, I'm not going anywhere, it's okay to talk about it. Because I do think a lot of people grow up in an environment that it's not okay to process it through after the fact. And that's a lot of what therapy is. And we teach you to do it with other people, because it's hugely wonderful. I mean, you can't go back in time and change what's happened. You can go forward and say, I'm going to make these decisions to talk to this person, assuming they have the capability to do that, and try to work those through with folks. And that can be wonderful. And to me, that's where all the good stuff in life really is, right? To be able to do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through your whole life masking. It is unfortunate that we have to do some work and try to process it and teach people in our lives, or ask them to try, for sure. But we can't wave a magic wand and get rid of your neurodiversity. That's kind of the reality of it, which sort of sucks. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, we would say there's probably enough messaging about that we'd like to move you away from.
Right.
It's like this is the way your brain is wired. This is not a choice. It's like depression. We've spoken about this. Like you don't wake up and go, I'm choosing happiness today. It's like, people who get depressed, they wake up and it's pretty cloudy and there's no particular reason. And that you can't just make a choice not for it to feel that way.
No, some people can, but that's not the vast majority. Yeah.
No. And I think when we're really talking about depression, that's not the case.
No.
But anyway, okay, everyone. Well, on that note,
let us know your blunt thoughts, because comments.
Do we really want to know them?
Yeah, because I think that's where it shows up, like in emails or comments on social media, is ripe for misunderstanding. So have at it, and we'll ask you more. Right?
Yeah, I love it. And the reason, I think the other social reason why people may be more unfiltered online, or like driving in your car and screaming at people, is that there's an anonymity piece. You would never say that face to face with a person, probably. I don't know. Or maybe you would. I don't know. I don't know.
There's been a lot written on that it's overly permissive for folks. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right, everyone. We will catch you in the next episode. Be good to you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.